citizens physically, you need to have the apparatus, the tools. Under our current constitution, security is on the exclusive list. So we all look up to the central government to help us with security, and the system today is that we then support the federal security institutions in our states. That model needs to be revised, and we all are witnesses to the gaps that we're now beginning to witness. Enforcement is key. No matter the laws we put in place to secure a business, if we cannot physically enforce those laws, if we don't have trained personnel to deter, criminals who undertake all sorts of activities to jeopardize people's businesses, then it will not happen. So we will not be able to run away from the fact that states will now have to play a much more role in the entire value chain for security, from having your policemen to investigate crimes, to prosecute, and also to have your own correctional facilities so that you can tame criminals and criminals within your territory. And I believe that we are at that stage. My brother in Kaduna, from Kaduna, you can imagine what he has been going through. Like Governor Lagos said, he was number one in terms of doing business ranking. Because investors perceived Kaduna as secure. Can we say same today? So for us, in Edo State, what we've done is to begin to look inwards to secure businesses and our businesses and our citizens. We are emphasizing the local vigilantes, because these are security structures that already exist in the communities. We are screening them. We're working with the federal agencies to profile the vigilante teams in all the communities. We're investing in the Nigerian police training facilities so that we can now begin to train these local vigilantes so that they understand modern ways of dealing with crime, of gathering intelligence. And it's working, because you go to some areas where there's a market.
Direct that question to Governor Nasiru.
Thank you, most distinguished Senator. I completely associate myself with the remarks made by my two brothers on the steps being taken, very similar to the steps we're taking here. The only addition to probably make is that they have a network in the community, and this is what has happened in our Ikunderi farm. Macedon has recruited a lot of local people to work on that project. It's a model that I think it's worth commending to others, because when people take ownership of particular institutions and facility, they tend to defend these institutions a lot better. The structural framework or constitutional framework of security is a challenge, and Governor Sanwo-Olu has spoken the mind of governors collectively that we need multi-level policing arrangement. And for us, multi-level policing arrangement, which includes state police, does not necessarily mean abrogating federal police. That's not our proposal, because federal police has its role, it has its place, and it has its jurisdiction. But when it comes to managing security in Kaduna, Governor Nasiru Rufai is better placed to do that than somebody who was posted from Abuja to come to Kaduna and has to constantly refer whatever he's asked to do to the number one policeman, the Inspector General in Abuja. The time that is lost in that process is one that we can ill afford, and we need to cut through the chase and do something about the security arrangement in the country. I think we also need to move away from this being a them and us situation. I'm sure Mr. Vice President is aware of this. This has happened to us in Ekiti, and I know for a fact it happened to Governor Nasiru Rufai in Kaduna when we were trying to procure drones. We got the drones, we got everything worked out. We even went to Mr. President. He gave us the necessary support. But surprisingly, sir, your national security advisor refused us access to end user certificate. So we eventually got it. Well, because you had set the pace, we got it in 1 year. And why? Because the national security advisor insisted that this is a weapon of and since security is in the exclusive list, we should not venture into this. And these are things that you have not provided the drones for us, because if you have provided, we wouldn't have a problem. We would gladly use your drones. We're willing to spend our resources to procure, yet we're not allowed to procure. And when we eventually procured, we had to sign an MOU with the Nigerian Air Force to come and operate it in Ekiti. I mean, these are areas that I think we can work together a lot more collaboratively to resolve these issues, because security is number one item on the agenda of many investors when they want to come to our state, and we can only do so much, and states are doing a lot already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This last contribution is going to be directed at the governor of Kaduna State. And we would like to hear from him the approach of his government to the issue of human capital development, particularly as it relates to service efficiency of the public service in rendering social services to the population and enabling business environment to businesses. We would like to hear from him how to tame this monster called recurrent expenditure in states, and how to free more money to do development, roads, schools, and deliver services to the people, so that the money of states can work for the people of the state. We would like to, you to share your experience in this area, and also, given the existential challenges of security in Kaduna State at the moment, how this impacts on the reforms that you are doing in governance, in business environment, in service delivery, and how sustainable your legacy will be in the face of this severe circumstance. Governor El-Rufai.
Thank you very much, my brother, Senator Bumi Ajit. Your Excellency, Oga, the Vice President and Chairman of National Economic Council. He is the true Governor General of the governors, because he chairs our Economic Council. Kayode is only Senior Governor of the governors. My colleagues, governors, and Your Royal Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, first let me apologize for coming in late. But Kaduna is very far away. And this morning I had to have a very important meeting with MTN because they sent their number 2 person to meet with the Kaduna State government to do some investment in digital education. It was a very important moment for us, because as His Excellency the Vice President will recall, when he came to our investment summit, His Royal Highness Muhammad Sanusi II announced that MTN was doing some digital education interventions in Africa, and Nigeria was excluded. And he forced them to include Nigeria and Kaduna was lucky to be the state to pilot this. So it's something that we're doing not just for Kaduna but on behalf of Nigeria, and that's why I got on my plane late. I apologize, Your Excellency. It is against all protocol for a governor to walk in after the Vice President has taken his seat, but our Vice President is a very humble man and allows us a lot of liberty. So we thank you, sir. First, let me congratulate my brother, the governor of Ekiti State, and my other younger brother, Akin Oyebode, for the very good job they are doing regarding economic management in the state. Ekiti is not an oil-producing state, it's not a high-revenue state, but what this government has been able to achieve is truly incredible in terms of physical and human development, and I want to use the opportunity to say that. And this summit is quite welcome. We've been doing that for 6 years, and it has brought us nearly $3 billion in inward investment. So it's not a talk shop at all. If you do this right, believe me, you'll see the results in dollars and cents and euros and sterling to your state. To come back to the 3 questions in one that I was asked, let me start with human capital. I think for every government, and these 2 issues, both the recurrent capital ratio and human capital, are linked, and I will explain why. You cannot address one without the other. No government, no country can do better than the quality of its public service. No educational system can do better than the quality of its teachers. No healthcare system can do better than the quality of its healthcare personnel. Human capital is the key to everything. So, what do you need to do? You must upgrade the quality of your public service. The public service must be educated, must be competent, must be trained regularly, and be given tools and technologies to be as efficient as possible. Government must be run as if it is a private sector organization if you are to deliver on services. And you cannot do that if half of your workforce have the equivalent of diploma and below. You can't. Meanwhile, there are many young people with degrees, some masters, even PhD. They are walking the streets looking for jobs. Meanwhile, while the public service is full of dead woods that are afraid of switching on a computer. So what we did in Kaduna State from day one was to weed out ghost workers. That is very simple. But we brought in consultants, a former permanent secretary, and a development expert whose names I will not reveal because they will say I'm trying to market them, to advise us on public service reform. And the result of that was that, we got rid of thousands of workers in our first year in office that we felt did not make the grade. And we opened the door to bring in young graduates that we knew would be trainable, would be motivated to deliver services. Overall, in the last 6 years, we have sacked more than 40,000 public servants. But guess what? We've employed 45,000. Okay? So in terms of numbers, we have not reduced numbers. We have not reduced the total numbers. What we have done was to bring more people of the right mix and quality. For instance, in the last 6 years, we have hired 10,000 teachers for our secondary schools, mostly in the fields of English, mathematics, sciences, and art. In our secondary schools, in our primary schools, we tested and sacked 22,000 teachers, but we hired 25,000 qualified teachers. Okay? In the public service, we abolished cadres like executive cadre, typists, confidential secretaries, and we put a computer in each officer's desk, we trained them, and we brought in younger people. Just 3 days ago, we appointed the youngest chief executive of a parastatal in Nigeria, a 28-year-old, who is going to be the head of our Kaduna Investment Promotion Agency. 28 years, extremely brilliant. When we met today with MTN, the number 2 man in MTN said he is going to snatch him away from us, because the boy was so bright. I mean, I didn't understand half of what they are talking about, blockchain and all that. But that's why he was there. We must give way to these young people to take Nigeria to the next level. So you must improve your public service. You must have more teachers. You must have more health workers. In the last 6 years, we have added the number of health workers in Kaduna State by 4,000. 4,000 health workers. Of course, it meant 4,000 executive officers and drivers and so typists had to go. But we brought in more people in our health system, in our educational system. So you must do that. You must have quality, but you must have training. We dedicate 2% of our budget to training of public servants. Every public servant must go for training at least once every 2 years. And we don't send you for training for DTA and ESTACOD. You go to proper training. Sometimes we bring professors from abroad. We bring retired judges from England to talk to our lawyers in the Ministry of Justice, experienced prosecutors. That's what we do. We don't send them to Dubai to go and see Burj Khalifa and come back and have a good time. We get them to get real training. You must train your staff consistently and motivate them. So that's one part of it. You must get a good functioning public service. And it must be fit for purpose, right qualifications, right training, right focus, and the right numbers. The second, of course, and once you do that, you'll begin to see your recurrent capital ratio improving. Because many of our states carry a lot of baggage because the public service we inherited was based on $100 per barrel oil price. And now we are down to 30, 40. Luckily it's going up to 80 now, but subsidy is taking all the money anyway, so we are getting nothing. Okay, so that's the first thing. And I think it requires a lot of courage to face up to the fact that, you have to do this, even if there are political costs associated with it. My brother here was said to have lost his second term bid the first time because he threatened to test teachers. I tested them and fired them before our election. And I said, and when I was asked that, I would lose the second term, I said, if losing second term of office will give Kaduna State children a future with better primary education, I'm ready to let it go. But guess what? We timed it correctly. We did it in 2017. Before 2019, people had forgotten. Okay? So the thing to do, and this for the next governor of Ekiti State, what Kayode has not done, go in there, do it quickly within the first 1 or 2 years. Before election, people will forget. Okay, so that's one. Secondly, do it honestly and objectively. People always understand when you do things right, when you don't play games. And message correctly. Because the story I gave to everyone in Kaduna, in my radio programs in vernacular, is look, I went to LEA Primary School. I went to Barewa College. I went to Ahmad Bello University. All these are government schools. I've never attended a private school in my life until I went for my second degree. But here I am, the governor of Kaduna State. We want the child of every poorest person in Kaduna, which my parents were, because I was orphaned at the age of 8. We want the child of the poorest person in Kaduna to have the opportunity to be a governor 30 years from now. And everybody understood the message. So we won our election without any problems. So this must be done. And as for the public service, just remember, unions do not think of the overall interest of society. They only think of the narrow interest of their members, and you must face them and do the right thing and appeal to the population to understand what you're doing. We have done that successfully in Kaduna without any consequences. And I urge all my colleagues to do the same. I remember when I was sacking teachers, 2 governors, I will not mention who, told me that we agree with what you're doing, but we are afraid of re-election. So we'll wait. After we get our second term, we'll do it. Both of them lost their re-election bid. So they could have done the right thing. Things would not have been worse. Maybe that would have even swung the election to their side. So human capital is key, and we take it for granted. But it's the key to everything. Without human beings, without the quality human beings, you can't deliver anything. You cannot. The recurrent problem is again another problem that we've all inherited. And I dare say that the recurrent problem in the federal government is even worse than that of any state. But it is something that has to be faced. And many of our colleagues are facing that problem in different ways. In Kaduna, we made a commitment from day one that we will never submit a budget to the State House of Assembly unless the capital component is at least 60%. And whatever we need to do, we will maintain that. So, but why do you put training? Because this is another thing. Civil servants are very clever. Because recurrent gets paid without any checking due process and all that, they will pack in things that are capital in nature as recurrent. I will give just one example. Training. If you're training your staff, that is the most important capital investment. It shouldn't be in the recurrent budget. But because civil servants want to fritter away that money, they will put it in the recurrent part of the budget. It is not recurrent. It is investment in human beings. That's the most important investment. It's more important than investment in roads. So you also need to look at your budget and reclassify certain items that you know are being placed as recurrent just because it will be easier to get the money out. And you must focus and get the right mix. And if you commit to it, it can be done. We've done it consistently in our last 6 years. And I think every state can do the same. Finally, on security. Security is a big problem. I think my colleagues have summarized it all. The federal government is in charge of security. But with our armed forces engaged in internal security operations in 32 states, they are overstretched. This is the reality. We have only less than 150,000 officers and men in the Nigerian Army. The Air Force is smaller, much smaller. Navy is even smaller. The police was 400,000 when this government came into office. It's now down to about 300,000 because there has been new recruitment in various because Police Service Commission and the IG are in court. Numbers have been going down. When I was elected governor, we had 13,000 policemen in Kaduna. Today we have 11,000. And the security problems are much worse. And remember, among those 11,000, a few thousand are carrying handbags of important people.
Okay, Governor El-Rufai.
Okay, so it's a problem, but I think yes, my colleagues have articulated it correctly.
Yes. And
the APC True Federalism Committee has made the case that we need multi-level policing, not just state police, even local government police. In federal jurisdictions, policing is divided between the different tiers of government. In fact, even in unitary jurisdictions like the UK, policing is local. And that's how it should be. And this is the appeal we are making to the National Assembly as they look at constitutional amendments to ensure that this happens. But policing is just one end, because when you have better policing, and I think my colleagues have made the case, so I don't have to make any case for multi-level policing, we also need to have a more responsive judiciary. which means we should also federalize the judiciary, decentralize the powers of the NJC to decide how many judges a state can have when they are not near the problem.
Thank you.
Nigeria is the only federation with a unitary judiciary. It's an oxymoron that should be got rid of. If the governor of Lagos State wants 100 high court judges and he can pay for them, what is the problem? So we have made that case as well, and these things should be linked. I'll just say one final word about security, then I'll stand down.
Okay.
You know, there is a major difference between security in headlines and security in fact. Kaduna State has 46,000 square kilometers of land. I joke with my Southeast governor friends that the whole of the 5 states of Southeast can fit in Kaduna State 2.5 times. This is the size of the state. And we are smaller than Niger State, we are smaller than Borno State. To cover that kind of area with 11,000 policemen is almost impossible. So there are many ungoverned spaces in our state. But you see, when an incident occurs in one part of the state, very remotely connected with what is happening in Kaduna or Zaria or the metropolitan centers, people think the entire Kaduna State is unsafe. It is not true. Kaduna is not Lagos. One local government in Kaduna, Birungwari local government, is 3 times the size of Lagos State. Okay? So when something happens in Ikeja, it doesn't mean that, you know, Epe is affected. It's the same thing, but even larger in Kaduna State. We have security challenges, but our investors know where their assets are and they know that those assets are safe. And we've never seen the headlines of security affecting our inflow of investments.
Thank you.
But we must work on improving security, but more than that, we must stop this us versus them mentality and collaborate more closely. And remember, once upon a time, Boko Haram was only in Northeast. Now, the biggest fear we have in the Northwest is that they are relocating to the Northwest because they have been chased out of the Northeast by ISWAP. And when they are chased out of Northwest, where do you think they will come? Somewhere else. So it is something we should all be concerned about. No, seriously. It is something we should be concerned about, not only federal-state collaboration, but also across the country. Don't see what is happening in Kaduna and say it's not my problem. It will be a problem one day unless it is solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have to thank His Excellency, the Vice President, for opening our minds to all these issues in his keynote address, and to all the governors present from Lagos to Edo and lately to Kaduna. We've had you and all your advices. We've not prepared our election manifesto for the next round. When we do, we will take note of your advice and we will act accordingly, because every politics will have to be local. To the hosts of these events, we are grateful for changing the Ekiti narrative, restoring honor, and taking us afresh, for giving us an opportunity for this kind of gathering. On this note, I would like to thank all of us on this panel and say thank you and good afternoon. Shall we take a round of photographs before we depart?
Ladies and gentlemen, please can we put our hands together once again for this amazing panel. Very, very insightful, and like our host governor did say, it's very important that we hear all the stories from all the regions, and that's what has happened here today. Please, wherever you are, please stop walking around and remain standing as we take the national anthem. Very quickly for the Vice President to please take his leave while we face our second panel of the day. We still have a second panel which we're going to be discussing investing in Ekiti, which is a very, very, very important topic of conversation. But Mr. Vice President needs to take his leave very quickly as we go into the second panel. So the national anthem, please. Thank you very much. Once again, please take your seats as the Vice President takes his leave, and we'll continue with our second panel for the evening. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Please remain seated. We still have a lot to discuss. One more panel on investment in Ekiti State, and our panel is about to take the stage. Please remain seated. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Our second panel is about to begin in 5 minutes, please. Just 5 minutes. Please settle down wherever you are so that we can commence our deliberations with the second panel.
Yeah. Check. Yeah, check. Yeah, check.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to commence immediately with the second panel of the day.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Yes.
They said Bumi is not here. So we'll take that one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to move into our second panel discussion for this afternoon at the Fountain Summit. We're going to be talking investing in Ekiti State. Please, can we settle down, please? Ladies and gentlemen, please, can we settle down, please? We need to start our second panel discussion. Thank you very much. I'd like to call, first of all, the moderator for this panel. We'll be talking, like I said, investing in Ekiti State and what investors should be looking out for if and when they decide to join us in making giant strides here in Ekiti State. I'd like to call on Ms. Yewande Sadiku to please join me here on stage. I'll put our hands together for her, please. Thank you very much. Next up on the panel, also joining this panel is the Managing Director for Macedon, Nigeria, who's here with us. Please put your hands together as I welcome on stage Mr. Bruno Grewers. Thank you very much. The MD for Macedon, Nigeria, Mr. Bruno Grewers. Thank you for joining us. Next up on the panel is the CEO FNS Farms, who will be joining us much later. But next up we have CEO Ella Lakes PLC, Mr. Chuka Modi, who's here with us. Can we please give him a round of applause as he joins us here on stage to share with us his wealth of experience with regards to finance and investments. Thank you very much, sir. Also joining us here, of course, is the Special Advisor to the President on Social Investments, Mrs. Miriam Uwais, MFR. Please put your hands together for her. Mrs. Miriam Uwais, who has a wealth of experience with regards to service in Nigeria. Thank you very much, ma'am. Please. And last but definitely not least, someone who is the son of the soil. I know we're all very proud of him because his ministry has been very, very hands-on with all we have seen here today. Honorable Commissioner of Finance here in Ekiti State. Please welcome Mr. Akintunde Oyebode as he joins us on stage. Thank you very much. Over to you, moderator.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, all. Esheo, the first session was very engaging. The keynote speech, the governor's address, the panel discussion by the governors of the states. It's a tough act to follow. Governors that are so engaged in the business of attracting investments to their states. But we'll share a different perspective with this panel today. The governors gave us insight at policy level and their experience of making things work. We'll look differently, we'll take a different perspective here, we'll take a different perspective from what is actually happening on the ground. The investors that come in, the investors that interact with you, and it will be interesting to hear their experience. I believe it is particularly important when one is selling Nigeria. As has been mentioned, Nigeria has 36 states that can act as sovereign states, that can sell themselves, as countries sell themselves, on the basis of their competitive advantages and on the basis of the particular investment opportunities that those states offer, to the world, not just they offer in Nigeria, but the investment opportunities they offer to the world. When the gentleman from NIPC was speaking, he spoke about the Book of States, which is a document that NIPC prepared that captured the investment opportunities and the competitive advantages of each of the states. The brochure that was shared quite brilliantly also provides us with material insight as to what Ekiti offers. If you start from page 32 to the rest of the document, it brilliantly captures the advantages of Ekiti State, the competitive advantages of Ekiti State, and we'll touch on it as we talk. But I thought I'll start with each of the panelists for them to share with us why they chose Ekiti State. I was asked by one of the speakers to express her regrets. I know that Ebuka said when he was speaking that the CEO of FMS Farms will join us later. I met her here when I arrived at 10 o'clock. She actually stayed throughout. But on account of another commitment, she regrets that she had to leave. And I'm hoping that we will cover the space for her, with our comments. But I'd like us to start with why you chose Ekiti State. The governor of Kaduna State talked about security being different when you read in the papers and what is actually on the ground. I think it'd be useful to share your experience. And we have different types of companies here. Macedon is a multinational, so present in more than one country. Ella Lakes is a company that is public and listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, so a different kind of company from Macedon. And Mrs. Owais brings fantastic insights. Many times when we think of investments, we think of the financial value of the investments, we think in economic terms, but there's a social aspect that I think will be useful for her to share. So if I start with Bruno, again, not in any particular order, except that you're closest to me. So if we start with why you chose Ekiti State.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you. Macedon is one of the larger food businesses in Nigeria, and we looked at how do we get into backward integration. So instead of importing the raw materials, how do we get into local sourcing? And one of the products that we sell is cowbell milk, and therefore we looked at how do we start a dairy business and dairy sourcing in Nigeria. And when we looked around, it was before my time, about 2 years ago, we looked at different states, but came across Ekiti State. And I think what attracted us to Ekiti State was the vision and the ambition of the governor and his administration. And 2 years down the line, I can say we probably could not have found a better partner. In our experience, and it's our experience, we're very, very happy. What we found in the administration here is an administration that really wants to enable businesses to be successful. And they pull that vision and the ambition through into actions. We now have been working with them for 2 years, and so we've worked with all the ministries, all the relevant ministries, all the relevant high commissioners, and we found a very, very capable team. But what I'd like to point out is that they are very pragmatic and practical in their approach. It's not about the talk, it's about the actions and the results. So for prospective investors, the team doesn't necessarily make you lots of promises, but they make commitments, and so far they have lived up to every single commitment they made to us. and they delivered it on time, and that's been hugely useful for us. And that's why 2 years down the line, when we started talking, the Ekiti dairy farm was re-established only last year. We already have now milk starting to flow. As previous speakers said, we have now 80,000 liters every month, and by the time we're fully functioning and we have a full herd in a number of years, we'll be producing about 10 million liters per annum. And I think what I found very useful, or as an investor, is they walk the talk. So what they say, you can hold them against it, and they actually do. And businesses in Nigeria, we are a big business in Nigeria, face a lot of challenges, as everyone knows. And some of these challenges is infrastructure. And the state has really, the government, and also with the help of their investment arm, Fountain Holdings, has really helped us with that infrastructure. So they built the access road, they delivered the access road to the farm, they reconnected us with the grid, they enabled us access to a dam, so we're building a pipeline, and they enabled us access to the land and with the right permits. A second biggest constraint, and it was talked about a lot, is security. And again, this is where the administration has really helped us. They, not only from a police perspective, but also they made sure there was a military post outside of the farm. And now they've also deployed their forest rangers, which are really, really helpful to secure our joint investments. So again, very, very helpful. And then thirdly, when it comes to red tape from a permits perspective, the fact that a year after the farm was set up, we are producing, we have cows, we are producing the milk, is showing that we get the permits, we can get moving. So overall for us, it's been a very business-friendly administration that is walking the talk and is delivering for business, at least for us. So it's been a very good experience.
Fantastic. Thank you. I want to underline something he said. He said they don't make a lot of promises, because it's not about how many promises you make, but they deliver on all the promises that they make. Ekiti State, apart from being the fountain of knowledge, is, after all, the land of honor and integrity. Chuka, please share your perspective.
Hello, again, I think it's working. Yes, so to answer the question, I think it was why Ekiti. I think from our perspective, there are a few personal reasons, but two main reasons. I think one was in terms of human capacity. We're trying to do the same thing in a variety of states around Nigeria, but it's simply where is it easiest to do in terms of ease of doing business and how quickly can we achieve the same things we want to achieve in other places in Ekiti State. I think so from perspective number one, in terms of human capacity, ease of doing business. I think I'm in Ekiti State fundamentally from Twitter. I was on Bloomberg and someone called Ekiti contacted me by Twitter, and the whole of Nigeria at the same time saying come to Ekiti State. I know it sounds like a funny story, but it's actually true. That's how Aki contacted me and said, we see all the things you want to do, you can achieve that in Ekiti State, come to Ekiti State. I think a week later we were speaking, and 2 weeks later I was here. And in terms of processes, processes can only be made efficient by human capacity. So you can have all the plans in the world, if you don't have the people to execute, it's just not possible. So from A to B to C to Z, I think every single efficient process we've had executed for us was as a function of, well, as a result of the efficient people that were driving the processes. So I think, from the human capacity angle, our perspective, it's been very helpful to us. We moved very fast, faster than and in most places that I can say we've tried to work, and I've worked in most states in Nigeria. So I think, like I said to Aki earlier, the fundamental reason for efficiency is people, and that was one of the primary reasons. And I think the second reason is you have to be aligned with the people you're trying to work with. A lot of people talk about what they want to do, but they're not certain about the things that they're actually trying to do. And I think if you have a governor who who believes in certain things and asks his people to focus on these things, then you have it institutionalized in terms of what they want to do. So a lot of states talk about sustainable development, sustainable agribusinesses, agroforestry. I think Ekiti State is probably the first state that I've dealt with that is doing it in a way that you recognize, they understand the challenges, they understand the processes, and everything has to be done correctly. So we're focused on a long-term agroforestry project with Ekiti State, and Ekiti State is the first state to take us through all the steps. It takes a long time to achieve these things. It can be dull, it can be tedious, but I think if you want to do things in a sustainable fashion, then you have to go about it the right way. And in Ekiti State so far, it's worked perfectly, so I think those are the two main reasons we're here.
From insights, I'll underscore, not by accident, that it is the fountain of knowledge. And the number of tertiary institutions in the state, it has to be on the cusp of what is new, what is coming, what is down the road, which is why the Honorable Commissioner uses all avenues for reaching investors, including in front of the entire world when he does it on Twitter. I think it's important, I'm going to underscore that point again, because it's one that matters materially to investors. It is easy, they say talk is cheap, and it is very easy to make a comment and say we'll do this, we'll do that. It's the ability to deliver and the speed that you can deliver it. So I'm going to underscore again the fact that Ekiti is the home, is a land of honor and integrity. I don't know whether you heard it the first time. I didn't get a round of applause that I expected for the state. Clearly, it's not something that is just written on paper. It's something that investors experience in their interactions. So when we speak about investment, it's very easy, to look at the financial value, and a lot of values, were mentioned, particularly when the governor and His Excellency the Vice President were speaking. We look at it from an economic perspective. But what about social investments, Mrs. Wace? That's a material part of the work that you've done, in particular over the last 5 years, 6 years.
Yes, good afternoon, and distinguished audience and panelists. Yes, I'm really encouraged by the conversation that was held this morning, because it is critical that we have the human beings that are driving the investments actually that have their capacity built. This is more about inclusive growth. Having disparities between those that are educated and wealthy and have access, with those that have no skills whatsoever or who have no education, and there are many across the country that are like that. You find them going into spaces that are actually dark, like violence, like substance abuse. And there has to be a concerted effort to see how we can pull these other categories of citizens who are just as Nigerian as you and I into places that are productive and constructive, so that they can live a life of dignity, so that they can take ownership of their own lives. And the same things you were talking about, stability and security, this is what will assure in the long term of having the kind of investments that we require for growth. Unfortunately, over the years, we've had challenges with generally the public finance system. They tend to look at infrastructure, the brick and the mortar, because clearly this is where the legacies lie, and this is where the contracts are given. In a 4-year term, it's difficult for a chief executive to be able to boast about the quality, the improvements in education and health. So those areas, the intangibles, have actually suffered, because it's not something that hits you in the face. Same thing even with the private sector. The private sector is more interested in returns on investment. So they want to see the impact and the profit they make almost immediately. These intangibles actually are just as critical. I'm not saying that it's not important to have returns on investment or to have infrastructure, but the truth is if you build a school, for instance, in a poor community, chances are if you don't address the poverty of the parents, the children will not go to those schools, no matter how nice the infrastructure is, because they'll be going with the parents to the farms, going out to hawk, and you'll have empty classes. So there has to be a way of ensuring that those people who have been left behind are actually supported to come into spaces where they can access a lot of the opportunities that exist in our country. One of the things that is very encouraging for me is the adoption of the multidimensional poverty index as a tool for measuring poverty. It has 3 dimensions: education, health, and living standards. So it's not just about not going to school, it's also about your nutrition. There are weighted values for each of the dimensions of poverty that need to be calculated to be able to understand, how poverty permeates in many families, in many households. And one of the things that I'm very happy about is the way we have been able to collate data across the country, the National Social Register, and the Ministry of Planning here has done a great job. We have almost 50,000 households on this and almost 195,000 individuals, and you can get down to the facts, what kind of assets they have, the gender dimensions, the age, and so you can actually plan better. There's even a community profile, so you know how far the schools are from the homes of these poor people, where the secondary schools are, even the network providers, the access roads to those places. I think this is a foundational, and it's very critical for us to be able to address poverty. I'm also very encouraged by the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy, which again resonated earlier. It's a national strategy that has the governors as part of this conversation. But very importantly, it's important for us to have the communities leading. We need to build capacity in the communities and in the local governments and in the states if we really want to address the challenges and the deprivations that many of our citizens face. And interestingly, it doesn't cost as much as it does for us. Small amounts actually, because they're hardworking, they're resilient, it actually makes an impact on their life. So one of the things that we're doing in the Office of the Vice President is trying to see how we can create capacity at community level through the At-Risk Children's Program. We're asking states to give us like 50 educated but unemployed youth in every local government. We want to train these people on basic literacy, numeracy, paralegal services, basic M&E, agriculture, depending on what has comparative advantage, vocations, financial literacy. Looking at the statistics in Ekiti State, I saw that the youth literacy rate was over 90%, but the employment rate was 15.5, I think, from UNESCO 2020. How do we get these people doing something constructive? And so I like the knowledge economy. Once we have this capacity created, it's not really about the children that are in school. It's also about the children that are not in school. It's also about the children that don't have any skills, the youth. We can assign these children to the youth facilitators that have been trained. They will be their mentors. We're looking at mental health. We're looking at substance abuse. We need to screen and have safeguards at community level. So they supervise these children and they give the state feedback on the progress on each and every child. So trying to build capacity at community level actually addresses sustainability. If you can trigger compassion and responsibility and even the skills, the wherewithal to be able to look after or cater for the welfare of these children, not money-wise, we're going to find the money to pay these youth facilitators on behalf of the state. But it's very important that they begin to appreciate the responsibility they have for others, their peers, and the other children in their communities, so that we're able to ensure that we have feedback and we can monitor their progress. I'm very happy to say that Ekiti State had signed the MOU with us. And this is also, it's got a focus on vulnerable girls that hawk. We're collating data on their mothers because there's a cost element. If you say a girl that's out there hawking is not going to hawk anymore, she's going to remain in learning spaces, the mother is going to push back. So we're working with Primary Healthcare Development Agency to create workshops where the mothers can attend and get cash transfers. Now, cash transfers on their own don't solve the problem, but we need to have a holistic program, a holistic intervention that ensures that we have sustainability and we begin to nurture, this passion for others, trying to support others within our community to see that they are able to attain a life of, achieve their aspirations at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Oweth. Youth literacy is over 90%. It's not, if we look at the average across Nigeria, we would find that it would vary materially widely. And certainly Ekiti State will be in the top bracket of education. But unemployment rate at over 15% clearly speaks to the material work that needs to be done. And I think in the context of investments, the financial value of the investments is important, the jobs they create are important, but it is also the kind of jobs they create. And from what I hear you say, is a deliberateness about engaging local communities. And if I can just, stay with you for a bit, how generally, is this funded? Is it funded federally? Is it funded by states? Is it, and I use this word almost deliberately. Is it foisted, if you like, on companies as CSR, or is it something you allow them to choose to do? I just want you to, to dwell on that and share a bit.
So there's a special intervention that has been allocated to the federal team to support the states. It's very important for us that we don't create new silos of efforts, so we're leveraging on what exists already. The stakeholders, the local facilities, we sign an MOU with the state to ensure that they have responsibilities and they know it's not enforceable, but they understand what their role is in this. They need to bring those children, create interim community hubs where the children that are the target beneficiaries are going to be brought in. Then they need to bring the facilitators. And we've got the National Board for Technical Education, for instance, very excited. They say many states don't have assessors, they don't have verifiers, they don't have master trainers. If you have educated young people, they will actually work with them, and so they are bringing their wherewithal to support. We engaged the private sector in Lagos in early July. We explained what the program was about, and we came with a funds manager, FBN Quest, because frankly, we would rather the monies be disbursed and the procurement be done by a third party, because that is so disruptive. To be able to focus on the work and to give assurance to the private sector that your money is being utilized for the purpose. That engagement stimulated a lot of interest. There are some companies or some firms that have approached us to say, we're really interested in creating life skills through performing arts, and we would like to engage with those youth that have skills in performing arts. We've got sports, we've got some of the development partners supporting us on various strands. We've got the Ministry of Education and NERSL saying, look, if you can get them 200 hectares of land, we will find loans for these young people. The Ministry of Water Resources has asked the MDs of the river basin authorities to allocate land for irrigation farming. We've got private sector people that are interested in the backward integration on dairy. LNZ is training some of the, in Gombe, for instance, some of the youth to see how they can actually get them involved in dairy farming. And so it's a medley of different streams of support. And we will just keep going. It's a leap of faith, but I think this needs to be done because we can't afford to continue leaving a huge sector of our country's citizens behind. And the more we talk about it, the more interest and passion we attract. Thank you.
You certainly have my attention. 50 from each state, 50 educated but unemployed youth. Yes, 50 from each local government in every state. Okay. I suspect from Ekiti, if you wanted to find 150, they will help you do it. As I mentioned, this document brilliantly from page 32 dwells materially on why Ekiti State. I like the identification of the sectors. I like the clustering of the investment opportunities. I like the provision of the deal flow that gives investors who are interested now the ability to plug in. But I don't want to, they say it's better to hear things directly from the horse's mouth. I don't want to speak for the horse. Aki Oyebode, Honorable Commissioner, please help us, help the audience, outside of reading what is written, better understand what Ekiti State is doing. I know nobody sells it like you and the governor do. Over to you.
Thank you. And first, I hope the horse that is speaking is a thoroughbred, just to clarify. But I think the case for Ekiti is very clear. And I think no one articulates that case more than Dr. Kayode Fayemi. He's very clear in the vision of the state that we want to see. And the clarity of vision, I think, is the most important thing in crafting what your economy wants to look like. You've got to start by saying, what is the future you want to create? And then what do you need to create that future? So for us, we're also very clear about our limited resources. We're not a state with unlimited resources, so we have to be very focused about the sectors that are of interest to us. And some of those sectors were chosen because there is historical, either heritage or know-how or significant activity in those sectors. Or some of them are just simply natural endowments. So the knowledge economy, I think, is very clear. We don't just boast about it, but we definitely have the largest PhD per capita across the country. And we have a very literate citizenry. So we figured that, look, we have to articulate all of this knowledge and commercialize it. And change that narrative from just, we go to school, we like to be educated, but to now start to create value and economic value out of it. So the knowledge economy was very clear to us. Agriculture, again, we were focused on specific sectors, specific value chains, because there's a need to be targeted. So, some of the examples we've seen here, Ella Lakes, for example, Macedon, fall within some of the target value chains that we want. Some of the people who are unable to speak here, again, companies like FMS Farms, Arog, etc., fall very clearly within the cassava value chain. And so we didn't want to become everything to everyone. We wanted to be clear that we'll deal with certain types of people. But I think for us, the most difficult question was to decide whether we wanted to travel and junket around the world, and it would certainly have earned me a lot more DTA, to look for foreign investors all over the place, or do we want to target people that have already answered the most important question, why Nigeria? So we felt that because we had just 4 years in office, we had to focus on those who have already taken a bet on Nigeria. And so if you look at the investor community that we've been able to attract, they are mainly either companies owned by Nigerians or international companies that are already operating in the country. So they've answered the why Nigeria question, and all we then need to do is help them very quickly answer the why Ekiti question. But I think the most important, there's never a silver bullet answer as to why Ekiti. But I think in my opinion, one of the most important things was setting up the Ekiti State Development and Investment Promotion Agency. Because it allowed us for the first time to bring all of these things into one institution and create a one-stop shop that answers multiple issues that investors might have. And I think Bruno makes the point very clearly, and thank you, Bruno, for this. Just to let you know, we didn't pay Bruno to say this. This is just feedback from an investor that has done tremendous work, and they trusted us, and that's one of the things I also say about the investor-government relationship. There's got to be mutual trust that you deliver what you say you deliver. And with Macedon, for example, I like to use them as a good example. They needed different things at different times. At one time, they needed a connection to the grid, which isn't within our control, but we had to engage the electricity distribution company to do that for us. They needed access roads. Again, ECDIPA isn't going to build a road, but can make a case for why this road should be prioritized because there's an investment need. But it's still the Ministry of Works and Transport that delivers that outcome. The grid connectivity was done by the Ministry of Infrastructure and Public Utilities. When there's a need for some interventions with whether it's the vets or or any sort of animal science conversation, it's the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security that will lead that conversation. So it's not enough just resourcing ECDIPA and thinking that ECDIPA can be the solution to the problem. It's also having colleagues who believe in a common vision and the civil service that can deliver on that vision. So unlike states I won't mention, I don't know that we have a significant challenge because when we call on people, they actually do what we require them to do. But it's also a collective for us to win because it's not just one ministry or one agency. You know, it's as much a win that the commissioners for investments, the commissioners for agriculture, the commissioners for infrastructure, and other people who, if commissioner for education, etc., are all clued in and locked into a common vision. So when ECDIPA has a challenge, they know to go to any ministry that they can resolve the problem within minutes or sometimes days. The second thing I'd like to say is we've also tried as best as we can to digitize a lot of the work we do. Our internal revenue service today is digitized, and that's always a big pain point investors have. They want to know, how do we pay taxes? How do we do our assessments? Today, if you can do it yourself, it's easy. You just go on the Ekiti IRS website. We've got a solution called ERAS. You can compute the taxes, you can pay online, you don't have to see anybody. And I think for me that's very important. Now, but the last point I would like to make is the things we're doing on the ease of doing business. And the Attorney General, the Judiciary, and of course, most importantly, our State House of Assembly having significant partners on that journey. So if you look at our House of Assembly, they have passed the laws that support doing business reforms very, very quickly. And it starts from the leadership, from Mr. Speaker, to all the members of the Assembly. So even the law that set up ECDIPA was one of the, it was set up before I literally took the ECDIPA job. Our laws on enforcement of contracts, the laws that allow us to reform the land system, all these things are very important to investors because investors want to know that there's protection to downside risks when they come into state. But then, of course, the last but not the least is the elephant in the room, security. And what you find is there's clearly, and I think as Bruno has said, we are very clear about supporting strategic investments. There's not a lot of it can be said publicly, but we do enough to ensure that the investor is confident that the investment is fully protected. The last point I'd like to note before I stand down is the conversation on how these investments affect the environment, society, the community. So if you come into Ekiti, we will encourage you, sometimes with a bit of an arm twist. Thankfully, in Macedon's case, we didn't need to do that, but to invest in the communities that you're operating in. So you hire from the local communities. And where we have shareholding, one of the things that we're working on now is how to build in a local community trust so that they also own equity in that entity and then they can earn dividend into perpetuity. And that also starts to teach communities that delayed gratification most times is a more dignified, sustainable way to look at how you deal with investors. But also the environment. We were investing significant sums in environment-friendly and sustainable activities. And so, for example, with Ella Lakes, a lot of the work we are doing on agroforestry is driven by how green we keep our forest reserves. Is driven by how many trees, for example, they are going to plant. And I know Chuka, he doesn't say it very nicely, but it's been a bit painful, because now we all understand that the process is super important. That community is where we hold it in trust. And so what we try to do is, in certain cases, we are painstaking about that conversation. But we also help our investors learn how to do business elsewhere. So, like Governor Rufai said with the MTN conversation, we do it for the country. Now Ella Lakes can go to other states and they can say, hey, this is a template that works, and we're happy to share that template with other people. I think the last thing I would like to touch on is on what we're doing with digital economy. Because at the heart of all of these things are young people who are restless, who adopt technology very quickly, but don't have an outlet to even learn the right skills and to deploy those skills into jobs. So I'm extremely excited about the knowledge zone, and I'm 100% certain that when you come here in 3 to 4 years' time, you are going to see a thriving zone that's employing hopefully hundreds of thousands of people. And the reason for this is simple. If you look across the various local governments in the states, there are people who know how to use telephones very well. There are people who understand technology intuitively. And all we're now doing is saying, we'll give you the right skill sets. We will attract the right businesses that can provide jobs in that value chain. And when we see that those jobs start to happen, it then brings bigger technology companies who might not even be in Nigeria. So our competition is not any state in the country. It's really taking jobs from Philippines, from Vietnam, from India. And we'll start with some of the low to mid-level skill jobs where Nigeria speaks, in our opinion, relatively toneless English. We've got a literate community. We've got broadband technology. And we've got people who can do some of these BPO jobs that creates, in tens and hundreds and thousands of jobs. So our commitment is that when you come here in 3 years, our unemployment rate certainly has to be in single digits. And that's why we're doing all we're doing. And I'd like to thank those who have taken a bet on us. Thank you very much for the bet you've taken. And we hope that other people come and take a similar bet on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ekiti personifies many of the things we like about Ekiti State. He personifies many of the things we love about Ekiti State. He's well-read, he's well-educated, he's an intellectual. He can argue with you about anything and everything, and he remains without doubt a man of honor and integrity, passionate as anybody can be about both Nigeria and his state. Thank you. If we had the luxury of time, I would have liked to ask the investors, if Ekiti was taking notes, and he should be taking notes, what else needs to be done to get more like you to come? What else do they need to do for you to become advocates for Ekiti? The governor is very involved. Clearly, the entire cabinet is involved, the judiciary is involved in terms of passing the laws that they need to, one, for ease of doing business, two, for the Ekiti State, for the Ekiti Development and Investment Agency. But what else do you think that the state should do? I'd like us to close on some nuggets of the things they need to do, in addition to everything they're doing already. And it's important for the audience just to underscore the wall of investments that is available for Ekiti may not be visible today. In the same way that if you want your child to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, it's not the first day they start school that they display that prowess in law or medicine. It is that they started the journey and they're faithful to that journey and they stick to it. And what we're seeing here is evidence, that journey in terms of attracting the right quality, the right type, the right depth of investments for Ekiti, already exists. So I've given you some time to chew on it. But what else do you think Ekiti State should be doing? And we'll round off on that note. Bruno?
Thanks for the question. It's a very interesting question. It's a hard question to answer because, as I said, we are very happy, and my only wish is that the continuity will continue into future administrations. So, and it's a word that was passed on before. So. And I think the capability that's being built now gives me reassurances when I see the people we deal with across all the ministries in Fountain Holdings, that capability is there. So I think that continuity is going to be there. And then my other wish is, because doing business in Nigeria, it's not just at state level, but it's also the federal government, is for Ekiti State to be a model for the federal government and for the whole of Nigeria. And I'll repeat that. And it's the candid conversations. We don't spend time on promises or lots of words. We have harsh discussions. Akin can be very hard. I mean, he can be very direct. We can be very direct. But it builds a trusting relationship. And you said it. It's the integrity. And I think if that can become a role model for the rest of the country, then I'm super positive.
Thank you, Bruno. Shuka?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are certain things of other externalities that are out of the control of state government, especially in a federation like, say, Nigeria. But if you ask me what I think the focus should be on, I would say very specifically education. And not just general education, but also I think encouraging skills that are useful for the industries that they want to grow. So I'd say focus on education and focus on skills that are relevant to the industries that they want to come to the state.
Fantastic. So they already have 90% literacy. So the feedback is not on increasing the literacy ratio, but focusing on the sectors that they want to attract investments in. Honorable Commissioner, you have written the notes. I trust you.
I can even tell my friend now, Mr. Modi, that, for example, the College of Agriculture and Technology in Ishon speaks to a very deliberate focus on driving agric extension workers that the agric industry, which is a critical area of focus for us, has. If you look at Bamidele Olumiloa University of Science and Technology, again, it's very deliberate about building a pipeline for the knowledge economy. So it's stuff we're doing, but we'll do a lot more of it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. We don't have enough time to dwell on more. If you would allow us, we'll round up on that note. But thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Talk with Konjoko because I'm rounding up. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Very quickly, let me invite the DG OTSD, Professor Mobolaji Aluko, to just wrap up everything, and that will be it. Professor, sir.
No. Where's Ken-Louis? It looks as if I'm talking to an empty audience here, but I'm supposed to wrap up, not really to thank you, but to simply say that We've had a number of good contributions. The governor has talked about restoring the values of the state. There's been a lot of contribution about ensuring that we consider the states as nations rather than just mere subnationals. That there should be greater cooperation between the states and the federal government, and that with all intent and purposes, the internal generation of each of the states can be doubled and even tripled and 10 times if the proper resources are used. I believe that we have learned a lot. Peer review really has occurred today, and we wish all of those who have heard, especially in Ekiti State, to go back